syllabus changes? Like, would that be $3?
Yes, yeah. So that happens both at Activities Council, we get updates on that, and then also the Club Hub in their weekly staff meetings that they have, that the VP for Activities is invited to. They get all of that information given to them on 2 separate places. And so everybody who's a part of the club is hearing it. And then also everybody who, all of the voting membership currently, or the AS employees that are part of it, I think they also are part of the approval process for approving the name changes. So they're already approving it and then having to re-vote on it again, so. Yeah, okay. Next we can move on to, we removed parliamentary procedures, so we can move on to our action items. First, the Sustainability, Equity, and Justice Fund Charge and Charter.
Yeah, this is just moving what we had last meeting to an action item. Again, to reiterate, we are bringing on the VP for Diversity. We are expanding the at-large seats from 3 to 4. And then just some minor grammatical stuff. Last week, I was worried because we weren't entirely sure who would be the grant coordinator, with our actual grant coordinator being out on medical leave, but I'm happy to announce that she has came back as of 2 days ago. So that is not something we need to stress about. So yeah, just getting this going and moving it forward.
Sorry if you already went over this last week when we talked about it, but how come Student Services VP is going to take it on?
I thought that with this year, I received a lot of feedback from the SEI about how it's SEJF, Sustainability, Equity, and Justice, but we are focusing so much on sustainability that in conversation between myself, Casey Hayden, and Zinta Lukens, who is the grant coordinator, we thought that it would be great to bring someone on board that might be able to expand the scope of this project into the other 2 categories, and it just made sense to bring that position on. So.
Sorry to interrupt you, Liam, but I realized that I accidentally skipped over the Legislative Affairs Council Charge and Charter discussion and the information items. Would it be all right if we moved back that item so that we're not jumping? I'm so sorry, my apologies.
Sorry.
It's document 6.
Yeah, so I remember that I didn't talk about our membership changes, so I talked with Morgan, and well, let me backtrack a little bit. So we decided that the LAC's weekly meeting times are going to be Tuesdays, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Morgan has prior engagements that she won't be able to attend those meetings, but we still want to have her doing her great work with her connections with the different like ABEI sections on campus. And so we added her as a non-voting member so that she won't affect quorum, but we can still like have her input oh yeah, on the non-voting. So we added the VP for Diversity as a non-voting member. And we're on the same page about that, which is great. And then on the voting membership, we added AS Senator, but like I said with Daisy, that still needs to be discussed over in the Senate, and I need to talk to Gabe about who she would like to appoint, or like what that process is going to look like. And then just to kind of recap from my report, BSC confirmed they want to be a part, LGBTQ plus Western confirmed, ESC has expressed interest, and I haven't heard back from DFL. The Disability Outreach Center isn't on this version for some reason. I need to fix that. And yeah, Sustainability Engagement Institute, I still need to reach out to them, or I'll ask Stella to get in contact with them. But yeah, that's just gonna the update of where we're at with membership. Also, so could you scroll down to the section about quorum, please? Adam, yeah, it's like further down for some reason. Adam and I had a meeting yesterday, and I just noticed this clause it has there in the second sentence. So it says, during the summer, when the council is not in session, the council's responsibilities fall to the AS Vice President for Governmental Affairs, that's me, and the AS Director of Legislative Affairs, that's Stella. And so we kind of realized like there's this vagueness of when the council is in session, and that's why like I felt empowered to make the decision about lobby day. But also I wanted to add clarification in the charter about what constitutes session. So, you know, that being from like the first official meeting of the council. But also personally, like I'm a little bit confused and I would like feedback from you guys about, I have had meetings with people who are like currently part of the council, but like, does that, you know, does that constitute the beginning of the session, or like at what point does the council become like official and session begins?
I definitely agree that we should define this at least a little bit more in here, because as far as I was aware, I was under the impression that LAC was currently meeting, because that was what was stated to me each time, that you were currently meeting with them actively, or at least members that are part of the committee. And so it just kind of brings to question that, especially if we were meeting quorum numbers from last year of the previous charter, the edits that haven't been made. I have a couple of questions though, as currently if you add the DOC to this, that's going to be 13 voting members, and that would make quorum 7 people.
Mm-hmm.
And so even I think when quorum was 5 people on LAC last year, or maybe it was 4, we struggled several times to meet quorum. And so I think in confirming with the student employee representatives, because that is a lot, I think I would work with their student supervisor or their professional staff or staff supervisors to ensure that what are the mechanisms of accountability to ensure that they are attending these meetings and what happens when they don't. Because I feel like it could be problematic because there were lots of student representatives that sat on the committee last year that we had the problem with attendance, and since they are part of a different area, they aren't even part of the AS, it can be hard to ensure that they attend these meetings, so that's something I would be aware of. And then one thing I also am interested in is in the rules of operation up there. It says that it is subject to review and approval by the AS Executive Board. I don't know if rules of operation, if we create them, needs to be approved by the executive board every time. I feel like, especially with, as we've seen with SEJF, a lot of our action at the very beginning of the year is taking action on rules of operation and charters, and I feel like really takes away from our speediness and our ability to address urgent issues past looking at a couple of documents every single time. And so my thoughts are, do we need to keep that in there? I, of course, think that the charter should be amended by a majority vote of the executive board, especially since it is attached to a fee, but I am unsure if the rules and operation governing its operation need to be approved by the AS executive board, especially when it is chaired by an executive board member.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Does anyone else have thoughts on that?
I agree.
Great. Snaps. Okay, so are you suggesting that we just edit out the subject to review and approval by the AS executive board?
Yeah, I would keep it at a majority vote of the council. I feel like the council is empowered to make decisions on its own and create an agenda and decide if it would like to have one or two lobby days. I don't see why the rules and operation of the committee, which there are no rules and operation of this committee and have not been for the 3 years that I've been aware of this committee. And so if there are ones that are created, I don't know if they necessarily have to come before the executive board every single year. So I just know that we have that in a lot of them. So I don't know. The executive board needs that power or ability to have to do that every year.
Yeah. Okay, so I agree, and I'll make that edit. And the other things to do for the charging charter is that defining of session, and going back to what you were saying about the confusion around that, is that the charter that was being used for the previous year expired this month, and so I've been in this weird limbo of.
Has it expired, or does it expire this month?
Says expires October 2023.
I would assume that happens at the end of the month. Would it be, Adam, if it expires October 2023, would it expire at the beginning of the month or the end of the month?
That would be a piece of vagueness that we can look into, but I think it's fair that if it expires in the month has not yet expired, therefore it is possibly not expired. I think it's fair to say you have till the end of the month.
And that's where I've been confused because there's language in the last charter, specifically talking about quorum, that just makes it confusing with how there are people who were listed, specifically local issues coordinator, director of legislative affairs, and the other OCE positions. Like those people are in their roles already, and so they're like officially part of the LEC, but the entire, like the other half of the LEC hasn't been seated. They're not seated membership, but operating under like the old charter, it just makes issues with quorum. And so if we haven't had quorum and we've been having these meetings, are they really LEC meetings? Are they official?
Yeah, I think we just clarify that in the next edits to the charge and charter, and then we won't have that process, or we won't have that confusion again. One other thing to note too that I think we should be aware of is a problem that was experienced last year is that non-voting members also take part in writing the agenda. Writing the agenda is a very time-intensive part of being part of this, and are you if you cannot vote on what comes before, and you can't review like funding proposals, you can't approve the budget, should you be writing part of the agenda is just the question. Because I myself was a non-voting member last year, and I wrote like 2 sections as part of the lobby agenda previously. And so it's maybe clarifying what voting membership and non-voting membership looks like in especially the craft of the LAC or the lobbying agenda, because I feel like that's the largest thing that this committee is really charged with.
Right.
And so maybe just clarifying the rules of non-voting and voting members.
I mean, to my mind, I think the non-voting members should play a role in crafting the agenda, because if they're not voting and they're not helping with that, why do they have this committee?
Yeah, normally non-voting members are reserved for the SGA and then also for the like those who are advising the committee. And so previously we've had student advisor, like the OCE director was the student advisor for the different OCE members that were on there, and then also the professional staff advisor too. So normally in all of the charge and charters that I've seen, non-voting membership is kept specifically for advisory or secretary roles.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I'll take that into consideration and discuss with the people that I have previously been meeting with, to figure this out. Yeah, I'll look into that and come back next week with more clarification on all those things. I also want to ask, and again, like the OPMA, if that applies, and also like should there be an SGA?
I think that's something that we can figure out in more individually. It doesn't have to be a whole board conversation, because I feel like that's a conversation we have to have about a lot of individual committees. But I think the current process we have, and we're already recording the meetings, we're creating agendas several days in advance. I feel like we can continue that, and then we will get updates from Adam, because Adam is looking further into it and will provide us with more information. So for the time being, we're doing good, and we'll continue the same process.
All of current practices with all of these subcommittees and groups are compliant with OPMA.
Okay. Yeah, who would be the secretary on the committee?
And we'll go down, what does it say for non-voting? It looks like you guys don't have a student government assistant, there's no SGA. Was that the same way in the previous Trojan Charter?
Yes.
That's interesting, because an SGA sat on that committee last year. I would add into the Trojan Charter that there is a student government assistant.
Okay. And I should be in contact with the SGAs who would like their.
Or I would in contact with Adam specifically.
Well, and yeah, clarification, this is great timing for that. We're still clarifying all of this. This is a much larger, more complicated challenge ongoing to get all the proper resources to the grant committees. So that's a great clarification and good timing for that discussion.
Okay, let's move on to the action items, which is going to be the SEJF. Do we have the Trojan Charter first?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to pause that discussion and come back to SEJF. Yeah, my only thoughts on it are the rules of operation in the Trojan Charter do not match when it comes to the amendments, and the Trojan Charter says that it needs to be approved by, I think, like the sustainability like office on campus, and then approved by the executive board after it's like in agreement with the committee. And then I think the Trojan Charter just says that it needs to be approved by the committee and then is given to the executive board. And so I bring up the same question is, do we need to have this layer of bureaucracy where the rules of operation are brought forward every year along with the Trojan Charter? I feel like it takes away from us truly being effective as representatives.
I fully agree, and I was going to suggest that when this is called to a vote, I would like to add the friendly amendment to, it was the rules of op, where we don't have to bring it like to the exec board unless there's like extenuating circumstances, but it is just subject to committee approval. So it just expedites everything.
Yeah, it's stated in the Trojan Charter as well. There's a rules of operation section.
Yeah, just amending that so that it's together.
Yeah, can we scroll down to the, thank you so much. Which part are we looking for? It should be at the very bottom. It's like rules of operation.
0.5.
There we go, yeah. We could even say like substantial changes or something like that, so it could still come before the executive board.
But it doesn't have to.
But it doesn't have to, because we're changing like small membership with the rules of op, and we spent like a while on it in executive board already. So, yeah. Okay, Kira, Ryan, she, her, move to approve the charge and charter of the Sustainability and Equity Justice Fund with changes to Section 6 amendments, or Section 5, my apologies, rules of operation, stating that the committee may adopt and amend rules of operation governing its operation by consensus of committee, subject to review and approval by the executive board, and change, so I don't know the exact wording that we want to use. Subject to review and approval by the executive board after substantial changes.
Can I reword that a little bit when I
Sure. No, let's say it now. State it now for the record.
The committee may adopt and amend rules of operation governing its operation by consensus of the committee, subject to review and approval. Trying to think of the best way to word it, like where the committee can approve it, barring substantial or significant changes or something like that. Some way of putting that.
Barring substantial changes, which
in which case it goes towards the exec.
in which case are subject to review and approval by the AS Executive Board.
I like that.
Okay.
Brad, second.
Let's state that out again. Sorry, for the record, just so that I'm typing it out. So we said barring okay, by consensus of the committee, barring substantial changes, which are then subject to review and approval of the AS Executive Board. Okay, Ryan Sheeher moves to approve the Sustainability, Equity, and Justice Fund charge and charter with the changes to Section 5 Rules of Operation. The committee may adopt and amend rules of operation governing its operation by consensus of the committee, barring substantial changes, which are then subject to review and approval of the Executive Board.
Brad, seconds.
The motion is moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of adopting the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion approved as stated. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the rules of operation.
I don't know what else there really is more to say, but amending, again, making sure that both the charge and charter and rules of op are synonymous with one another.
Yeah, it's on the very last page of this document, so page 6, the very last thing that is stated. Yeah, see, this is where it says something different than the charge and charter.
Yeah.
It says, and any Sustainability Engagement Institute staff positions. Do Sustainability Engagement Institute staff, do they have seated positions on this, correct?
Non-voting.
Non-voting. So then they have insight being part of the SEJF committee.
Yeah, we primarily have sort of grant advisors and folks that have worked with the project teams. And their insight has been invaluable, but that is a good point, noting that it's not the same.
We could use similar language of the rules of operation. This rules of operation document may be amended by a majority vote of the committee, barring substantial changes, which are then subject to review and approval by the AS Executive Board. Yes, Bob?
Advisor, question.
Yeah.
Could you not refer back to the approved charge and charter in this section? as
Oh, yeah, we
stated in
could
the
just say
approved
that.
Charge and charter, and then you're not chasing edits through multiple documents potentially.
That would make my life and my predecessor's life significantly easier, so I'd much rather prefer that. How would that be worded?
This rules of operation document may be amended in accordance with the section and cite the section.
Charge and charter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Section governing rules of operation and the current approved charge and charter. I would also suggest in this, as you're discussing non-voting membership, there is a clause in your rules of operations about responsibility during non-seated times or non-active times, and would suggest reviewing that to make sure you're comfortable continuing with that if one of those individuals is a non-voting member who holds operational power during non-session times.
Are you referring to the grant coordinator position?
If you scroll up to, I just saw it as I was looking through it, member responsibility. Pause there for a moment. I was just looking at it. I'll find it. Give me just a second. Apologies, I don't have it pulled up directly. Oh, it's actually in the charging charter itself. It's out of session process.
There's one right here.
Number 4. Yeah. So it's clear that there was an intent to mirror those two documents here. ASWWU, the Assistant Director for Student Activities, and the Director of Student Engagement, are those all voting members?
No, none of the positions are voting members.
Right. So, just a question for you all to consider. I don't have any guidance either way.
Oh.
We've discussed that, us three, and we're both comfortable with it at this time, but going forward, it is worth reviewing again.
I mean, that could be a substantial change that we bring forward.
That would be worth, yeah.
Okay. How would we like to move forward? It is 7:04. If we approve the charging charter that says that, do we still have to approve these rules of op?
It's in the rules of op.
Second.
I think the updated charging charter potentially supersedes that. If you want ultimate, or if you would like some more research into that, you could potentially table this action item on the rules of operation update. Take a week, you've got the charging charter updated and approved, and then we can confidently come back next week with this and say yay or nay, it needs action or not.
That what you mean?
Okay. I, Kira Ryan, vote to table the Sustainability and Equity Justice Fund Rules of Operation to the meeting on October 19, 2023. Seconded by Godwin. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved as stated. Okay, or motion is tabled. Yeah, okay. And then I would like to adjourn this meeting at 7:05 p.m.
Yeah.
We're still live, just for the record, so give us just a second.